Gun Rights Radio Network has the best pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun rights podcast available on the net. The podcasts are absolutely free when subscribing using iTunes or Zune Marketplace. Or if you want, you can just listen from the website. Make sure you visit gunrightsradio.com to subscribe. Podcasting freedom, one episode at a time.
Pew, pew, pew. Right. Do that 1,000 times. Yeah.
So welcome back to Power Factor. I'm Steve.
I'm Rick.
And today we're going to talk about our favorite guns, the 1911s, and as they are used in IDPA CDP division and USPSA Singlestack division, which is a fairly new division that was created a couple of years ago, actually. Initially, they created it as a kind of an interim division, tested it out to see how what the attraction was to it, what the feedback was to it, whether it was accepted or not. And generally speaking, it seems like it's been accepted and it's been made an official division, I think about a year or two ago. So, at any rate.
Yeah, though the Singlestack 1911 was kind of the founding weapon of USPSA, or IPSC anyway. As the competition developed over the years, the Singlestack, and especially the Singlestack 45, kind of fell out of favor. The rules kind of left it behind, and it wasn't seen very much in competition. And I think there was kind of a sense of, we don't want that iconic pistol to die in USPSA competition. And so, like Steve said, there was a provisional division. It let it run for a year, decided then to vote on whether or not it would be accepted, and it was. And as it turned out, the rules for Singlestack division are essentially the same as lifted from the IDPA rulebook, where the 45 was kind of similarly protected by IDPA a couple of years earlier, because the custom defensive pistol and enhanced service pistol divisions were essentially separated only by caliber and capacity. There was a sense that the 45 pistol would be, it would just fall out of favor, that smaller calibers that could make major power factor would replace it. And so the response to that by IDPA was just to create or modify custom defensive pistol divisions so that it was only for 45 ACP chambered pistols, to ensure that there would always be a home for the 1911 style pistol in IDPA. And then when USPSA developed the similar Singlestack division, they essentially cribbed out of the IDPA rulebook. So as has been kind of a happily developing situation for the two sports, if you have a gun that's IDPA legal, it's also going to be legal for stock service pistol.
Right. Wait a minute. No, you mean single stack.
Single stack. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
sorry.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So what, in terms of IDPA, what actually is the difference, if you're going to describe the difference primarily between CDP and ESP, is that right?
The only difference between CDP and ESP is calibers, that is power factor, and capacity. So another equivalency is that in stock, or in single stack division in USPSA, you're allowed to load 8 rounds if you're shooting major power factor. If you're shooting minor power factor, you can load 10 in the same division. IDPA has a similar situation in enhanced service pistol and custom defensive pistol. They break it out into 2 divisions, but it's the same deal. 8 rounds at major, 10 rounds at minor. But in terms of the physical characteristics of the guns, the sights, the triggers, the safeties, and whatnot, the only real difference is that now custom defensive pistol has a weight limit of 42 ounces, and enhanced service pistol has a weight limit of 43 ounces.
So USPSA single stack is really kind of a marrying, so to speak, of CDP and ESP divisions all in one. Where
they've just blended the 2 divisions together.
And there is major and there is minor, and there's a debate of whether it's better to shoot, 8 rounds of major versus the 9 or 10 rounds of minor, and it can depend on what the course of fire looks like over an entire match. I mean, if you're finding that a lot of the arrays are 8-round arrays, and maybe there's some steel involved in there, that maybe having that extra round or 2 might be a benefit.
Yeah,
but
at the highest levels, it hasn't been the case.
It hasn't, and nobody's actually, I don't think, as of yet, won the single stack nationals or our other favorite match that we have attended before in the past of the Western States single stack match, which we'll talk about in a future date or future episode, using minor. Minor in single stack.
Yeah. The advantage of having the 2 extra rounds in the mag seems not to balance the power factor situation. The extra points accorded for major seems to be more of a benefit than the extra 2 rounds.
So USPSA single stack also has a weight restriction, and they also have a box rule. Does IDP have a box rule?
Yep. Lifted it right from IDPA. The box dimensions are the same. The only difference, if you've got a single stack 45 that you're shooting in custom defensive pistol that you also want to shoot in single stack, is the weight limit in IDPA is 42 ounces, and USPSA adopted the 43-ounce weight limit. So if your gun weighs 42 ounces, you're good. Weighs 43 ounces, you better have a plastic something to replace a metal something to knock that. And that's something we're going to get into because it's a hotly contested issue, this weight issue, and how it affects the competitiveness of the various guns in the division.
Right. And I have something I'll say in a bit here about how I can probably throw that completely out the window.
So what you'll find in the single stack divisions is the rules, because generally driven by this weight limit, you can add a lot of different features to the gun that were not on the standard original 1911 design. Now Steve's got what amounts to a factory. You can still get this gun from Colt. This is a Series 80 government model.
This is actually one of the 1991 government models, Series 80, in terms of the safety that they put into the trigger safety, firing pin block safety, which I disabled.
Functionally identical to the guns that Colt's been making since the 20s, and very little different from the ones they've been making since 1911. And it weighs about 39 ounces in all steel format. And so for custom defensive pistol, you can add stuff to the gun that increases its weight by 3 ounces, and for single stack by 4 ounces. Now this is a very basic gun. It's got none of what I refer to as bells and whistles that have become essentially competition standard features. Now here's an example. This is a modern kind of version of the 1911 style pistol. This is a Kimber stainless TLERL2, which is, I'm sure, is very different from the stainless TLERL1 or RL3, for instance. But as you can see, compared to Steve's very basic gun, we've got enlarged fiber optic sights, front and rear. We've got the front cocking serrations in addition to the rear ones. We've got a huge magwell funnel. You'll notice that on this gun, you've just got a little bit of a bevel on the edge of the frame. What else we have here? Checkered front strap, rather than the smoothed one.
Extended thumb safety.
Yeah, we got the big giant extended mag release.
Skeletonized hammer beaver tail
grip safety. And a lot of this stuff, even 15 years ago, to get a gun like this, you had to buy one like that and pay a gunsmith to do all these modifications.
Lighten trigger.
Yeah. Anyway. So the revolution in the 1911 that has come in the last 15 years or so is to go from a market that was exclusively guns of this type, and the requirement, if you wanted to make your gun a competition style pistol, to pay somebody to modify it into this configuration, is now you can buy a gun like this over the counter. Everybody who's a player in the 1911 market today, which is an almost innumerable number of countries in the United States, Europe, Asia, are making guns of this type that already have the high visibility sights, the beaver tail, the magwell, and whatnot on it. And while this gun is perfectly usable and perfectly legal, you can make the modifications to this gun or buy a gun like this that has all of these competition features on it. This one also has a nice light rail if you want to attach a light to it for more tactical.
So I don't know if the microphone will pick this up, but shake your gun.
Oh, listen to that.
Yeah.
You can put your baby to sleep with that one.
Yeah.
But that's the other feature, is that these guns were built to essentially military standards. It's a service pistol. It's designed to be durable and reliable. And if you can also hit a wash tub at 50 yards with it, that's good. But in turning it into a target pistol, or what Jeff Cooper referred to as a service target pistol, it was supposed to be accurate, but it was also supposed to retain the reliability and durability of a service pistol. And it's been kind of a trick. I mean, trying to maintain the durability and the reliability of the original design while running a 2-pound trigger and shooting 2-inch groups. And it has been kind of a bumpy road over the years. But I remember even like 10 or 15 years ago, people would talk about a 3.5-pound trigger, like if it was on, that's the border of insanity in terms of how light you can go with a 3.5-pound trigger. And now guys are routinely running sub 2-pound triggers that are quite durable. I mean, it used to be the 3.5-pound.
What do you think
trigger,
that is?
That's probably 2.5 or something. Yeah. So, the improvements in materials, gunsmithing abilities, it's just everything that was custom and fancy and was really expensive in the past is now available to anybody. And you can buy a gun now that has all these bells and whistles on it and is perfectly functional for about $600. And it's pretty incredible when you look at how the gun has developed over the years to turn it from this into this. But, there's many steps in between, and we're going to go over little features one by one and their value.
Okay, so to dispel the rumors or myths that you need to have a fairly high-end or a competition gun to be competitive, this, as we pointed out, or Ray pointed out, is pretty much a stock 1911 Colt Series 80 pistol. I've always been a fan of the Series 70 guns, so when I got this, my desire was to make it look like a Series 70 pistol. So I put on the Series 70 grip panels with the Colt medallions. I replaced the trigger with I think it's a nickel trigger or something like that they put in the Series 70s. Yeah. I removed the bluing from the hammer because the Series 70s had the nickeled or whatever stainless looking hammer. Other modifications I've done, I put in a full length guide rod, and I put in a EGW angle bore barrel bushing, which tightens up the barrel to slide fit quite a bit. That's primarily, and I did a trigger job to it, so the trigger breaks it 2.25 pounds, so you weren't very far off. That's all I'd done to that gun. In 2006, I was kind of transitioning between shooting limited 10 and shooting limited. I had just purchased my STI Edge and was getting ready to shoot limited division, but didn't have all my magazines and stuff like that, so I shot single stack for a period. I shot the 2006 Area 1 Championship in single stack division and finished at 99.7%, literally 1.3, I think, points, match points behind the guy that won the match. There were some other factory-sponsored shooters in there shooting their high-end whiz, suit guns that have been highly customized. So to dispel the myth that you've got to have all these whiz-bang gadgets in your gun to be competitive, I can prove here that you don't.
And kind of along those same lines, this is the gun that I've been shooting in single stack for the last couple of years, and it's very much more like Steve's gun than it is like the high-end pistols. There's no beaver tail, no magwell funnel. It does have a match barrel and bushing and improved sights, but you really, the mechanical features can take you only so far, and you do not need to spend a lot of money on a gun that's all tricked out for good performance, but your performance will benefit from having some of the features. I know when I switched from a gun like this to one more like this when I was shooting limited 10 with a single stack pistol, the magwell funnel and the beaver tail and some of those features, the fiber optic sight, within a span of a month, I think my classification went up about 10%. And so there are some benefits to these modifications. It wasn't stuff just made up for the heck of it. They do provide a benefit, but you can be successful without them. I've shot this gun at a lot of matches and never felt like it held me back. I shot it at the Factory Gun Nationals back in 2000. I've used it at a bunch of sanctioned IDPA matches and never felt like, oh, geez, I wish I had a bigger, whatever on it. It runs all the time. If you go back and read what Jeff Cooper was saying back in the 60s and 70s, you need a gun that runs all the time. It's got to have good sights, and it's got to have a usable trigger, and that's what these guns have, and it's perfectly satisfactory. If you've got a gun like this without the whiz-bang stuff on it, you can still be successful.
Yeah, very successful.